Smart 24, driving business.
Thank you so much for once again staying with us. This is Smart 24 TV, and we drive your business. My name is Anthony Sebale, and remember to follow me on Twitter at Anthony Sebale, and also follow Smart 24 TV at Smart 24 TV now. There you definitely give us feedback, and we'll be able to actually interact. We are still talking about what is ahead for the Capital Markets Authority in a very challenging environment that is being operated in currently. We discussed in our first part what the new appointments should be looking out for in their next tenure. And with Council Luis Chizito, who is very interested in the capital markets, he is also an advocate and also deals in a number of venture capital deals. He has a number of friends. When you talk about capital markets, he is one person you can never skip when it comes to the Ugandan capital markets especially. Now, Council, we talked about, first of all, a number of issues in the first part, especially concerning the dominance of investors, big investors like NSSF in our markets. Looking at the former IPOs we've had, just of recent, the Airtel IPO, NSSF took 50% of the issued 800 billion shares. And this was about 10% of the entire Airtel company. And the retail investors hardly took even 10% of the rest of the shares. Even 1%, barely. Is this a good thing? Is this a good thing for a market that is growing and for a market that is seeking out for more new investors?
Without law reform, what happened to the Airtel IPO is going to worsen with a new player who is going to give us the next IPO. Part of the reason why the IPO, the Airtel IPO, I can't say failed, did not meet, was undersubscribed, grossly undersubscribed. It was to do with the pricing. NSSF felt that the price, they wanted to control the price, and you can't blame them really. So part of the reason why they extended it for the next 2 weeks, beyond the 2 months, was they were in the negotiations with NSSF.
It was a bargain, sort of.
You could say, and because they were the only institutional investor that was willing to put in money at the time, they of course held all the cards, and they held the transaction advisor and the issue of the securities, which is Airtel Uganda. They held them at ransom. So we need to amend the law to provide for other ways for price discoveries during public offerings. It shouldn't be just having an off-exchange IPO, then you wait for a listing. We can actually leverage things like on-exchange offers. And by the Honorable Narrator's bill has on-exchange offers. We put those things in the bill. But when Capital Markets Authority guys saw the kind of innovations we put in the bill, they just looked on, and they couldn't even say that, well, this is something good. They just looked on. So we should look into things like listing by introduction. But okay, let's not go that far. But we can leverage technology and look at on-exchange offers, so that the price signals can be reflected, the up and down market signals can be reflected, even within what we call the IPO 2 months. Airtel wanted to look for a way of reducing the offer price, but they couldn't. But they had to play around.
There's no regulation whatsoever about the pricing?
Ideally, if the offer is 100 shillings in the prospectus, why would you offer an institutional investor less? But all those things should be looked at in law reform. And the capital markets, if they keep regulating asset classes of people, of the licensed, if the Capital Markets Authority regulators keep regulating asset classes like equities, like ETFs, and not the conduct that people are offering those products, they will go into that mix. One of the points we have been making at Capital Markets Authority is that they should restrict their regulation to the behavior of those they have licensed. If they are to go into regulating the asset class, then they should justify why they are doing it. But when you create equity, you create ETF regulations, so for me I would think that we need law reform so that the institutional investors feel comfortable. The issue with Airtel was just the pricing. So that is why all institutional investors stayed out, apart from one, and NSSF had no choice. And my gut tells me that NSSF was even directed to buy those shares.
When you talk about the off-exchange pricing, if I'm not getting it,
The kind of things you saw.
off-exchange offers, isn't that like sort of allowing the prices to go up and down during the IPO?
Yes.
Is that a good thing for a company that is seeking to raise capital, which is the primary objective?
I'm not happy with 100 shillings. I will know that, the market is saying 80. I buy them at 80, rather than extending for the 2 weeks. Yes. Actually, you can actually raise more money. If I dispute, part of the reason why people did not invest in Airtel, 90% of people I've talked to, was the price. Even the delay, by the way, NSSF had actually made up its mind not to even invest. But for some reason they did anyway. I don't know. They did. But if there were on-exchange offers, the market will show you that, hey, you have told us 100 new prospectus, but for us we think, and it's not happening in Uganda alone. These are things that are happening on NASDAQ, there are things that are happening in Hong Kong, there are things that are even happening in Johannesburg. Okay? Now, it also questions the so-called prospectus approval process of the CMA. We have told them, CMA should not even be wasting issuers' time by approving an issuer's prospectus. And they're like, no, we should protect the investors. We're like, also the investors in the US are protected, but the Securities and Exchange Commission of the US doesn't come in to say we're going to approve the prospectus for Apple. They know they have sanctioned the rules of those stock exchanges. Because look, and I've mentioned this, the stock exchanges scrutinize the prospectuses and then they issue a certificate of compliance to the issuer of those securities, the company. So what is the business of Capital Markets Authority subjecting the listing decision of the stock exchange to their approval? Those bureaucracies are costly. So part of the things that are even eating into pricing of shares are that, the so-called listing fees. But this is a discussion they don't want to have. So for me, I would conclude your question by saying the institutional investors need to be given confidence that our markets are robust in terms of not only regulation, but even cost effectiveness. Part of the reason why the REITs are failing is that you have bad laws. You will never see a REIT in Uganda. Why? Number one, you need 7 professional investors who each have the capacity to raise 150 million shillings for the REIT to even take off. No one can do it. That is Nairobi. Yeah. But even they're also not doing well in Nairobi. But the other thing we have in our regulations here, if you look at the Collective Investment Scheme Act, it says you cannot list units of a collective investment scheme that have been given. Then what happens to listed units of a REIT? Because suppose I'm going to do a listed REIT. Because remember, a REIT falls into the spectrum, the bigger category of the collective investment. So what happens to them? So, all these, and part of the reason why we're not diversifying our capital markets is that you have laws that are very archaic. And the people in those offices at Capital Markets Authority and Ministry of Finance don't even have capacity to come up with better laws. Now, when a private member comes up with a private member's bill saying, this is what we should do, they feel offended and they don't want to back the bill. So, we're in a catch-22.
We're talking about still dominance of these firms and foreign investors as well, because also foreign investors are some of the biggest investors we have here. You'll be shocked.
No, it is true. I'm not shocked.
Yes, we might have more foreign investors than local investors or retail investors in our capital markets.
Even in our bond markets.
Now, that is creating a more illiquid market, and that is creating a rather weaker capital markets in our country. Where do we need to touch? Because if at all the problem is with the rules that's part of the problem. Yes, that's part of the problem. Where is the rest of the problem? Because this could be the tip of the iceberg, but the bigger problem could be underneath.
You see, once you change the rules and they're favorable for private players, they will innovate and see how to market their products. Let me give you a very good example.
You give them space to innovate.
Exactly. Let me give you a good example. Do you know that there's a person I know who was licensed? Let me mention the name, I hope you will not get offended. My friend Abraham, he's the CEO of Level Africa. He went to Capital Markets Authority and told them, guys, I have a blockchain solution to the capital markets. And it was not even capital, he wasn't even talking about cryptocurrencies. He was talking about a blockchain solution. They told him, we're going to license you. Blockchain, no. And I'm like, guys, what is wrong with you? So if you have people who have that, that's why I was telling you in the beginning, the new challenge ahead for people who are who have gone into office in the capital markets is mindset. So why are we dominated by foreign investors? And is it creating, and where is the problem? Number one, if you give the private players leeway, they will innovate more comfortably. But once you go and you start regulating the asset class, you will even stay for its growth. I will tell you, when you look at, for instance, they have regulations for for capital, financial, and prudential requirements. We've told them those regulations are actually going to suffer growth. But why is the problem? I think I was reading research. I think that research was, they don't even know the stock exchanges. And these are educated people with a university degree. So I would think, this also makes the Capital Markets Authority work easier if they're going to justify a bigger budget at Parliament in the next financial year. They should go and tailor-make the syllabus of even a primary school child to make him understand what a migabo is and how he can invest in them. So that people are not preoccupied with real estate. Because when real estate, by the way, is not as it's not a short-term kind of investment you make. So for me, I would think Capital Markets Authority should focus more on, they should even actually, I think this is a suggestion, and I think this would help them stop stressing people with unrealistic regulations as of justifying their existence. CMA and Ministry of Education come and say, but financial literacy is now a problem. What should we do? How can we tailor-make research? So people who are living P7 know that in simple terms, not in our glorified terms, no. In simple terms, someone should know that capital markets are this is what they do, this is what they should do. So that someone lives just even P7 S4, knowing that stock exchange does this is what it does. Shouldn't even know that CMA exists, but should know that the capital markets exist. And I think it's a problem of education. So I think something that Capital Markets Authority should do in conjunction with the Ministry of Education is how could we tailor-make a syllabus? Are they even involved in the curriculum review of the Ministry of Education? Because there is research that actually points to the fact that very few educated people know what's going on in the capital markets. So how is CMA responding? For them, they're responding by creating regulations to regulate the few players who are there. And like I've told you, in the next 10 years, even the few who are there are going to leave. So for me, I would think the problem is education. And it should not stop at going to CBS and other radio stations and talking about collective investment schemes. No. Because even the collective investment schemes, by the way, they have reached their ceiling. They can't go any further. Yes, they are growing, but I don't think, when your asset class is bonds, there is a ceiling in how far.
99% almost.
No, 100%. You give me a collective investment scheme that is not investing in bonds.
Yeah, there are some, of course, that are
equities.
And
they go into equities.
Yes.
No. And by the way, what part of the reason why those people should be interested in why the chaos happening in the bond market is they should find out what is happening to their growth prospects. And I've told some people this. I've told them the only asset class that people are finding suitable to package in a unit trust is our bonds. So if your only asset,
it's a fixed income market under the umbrella of unit trusts.
You could say they're only investing in fixed income securities. They are pooling people's money together to invest in fixed income securities. And the fixed income securities are bonds, government bonds. So if
because of the continuous flow of money, they are liquid because they always have money on them.
And now that the bond market is having issues world over, you know what's happening to bond prices world over? They are falling. Meaning even the investor appetite, those foreign investors you're talking about, are going to greener pastures. That's why you see whenever there is inflation, the bond market, the prices, okay, by default when there's inflation, the prices should go down. That means the foreign investors will exit the market. They will take money somewhere to countries that have deeper, more diversified asset classes. So much as one of the achievements of Mr. Keith Karejira was growing the collective investment schemes, there is a ceiling to how far that growth can go. Right now, I think they have around 60,000 accounts for collective investment schemes, for unit trusts. That's even the lowest in the region, by the way. Even Tanzania is doing better. Okay, not doing better, but in nominal terms, when you look at the figures, Tanzania, I think they have around 100,000 or 80,000. Kenya, they have 100,000. You have 60,000. So if you compare even the performance alone, in just nominal terms, we are doing badly. And because we only have fixed income securities that the only go-to area for collective investment schemes, there is a ceiling. So that ceiling is going to be seen. In the next 1.5 years, trust me, you're going to see stagnation in that market of the unit trusts. I think we should go in, all in. It's a good market, but it has its ceiling because of our asset class. We have failed to diversify them. And you blame Capital Markets Authority because of their weird regulations. And when you tell them honestly that this regulation is bad, they are talking back at you. If a private player who is in the market is telling you this regulation is bad, sit down and understand, okay, how can we protect investors, but why are we also helping him do business? But if you are protecting investors at the expense of this player, he will go, and then what are you going to regulate? Nothing. So for me, I would think there is a ceiling to how far these asset class, rather the collective investment schemes, the unit trusts can grow. And they should look into it now before it's too late.
Well, finally, on the issue of capital markets, before we move on to the mergers and takeovers within the region, the lack of retail investors has cost us a lot. Like you've mentioned, the flight of foreign investors whenever things are not going right, whenever there's inflation, and there are bonds that are selling highly in US, they always run off. The Capital Markets Authority has put in place just a few training programs for university students, maybe at a certain time, but there hasn't been a consistent effort, especially from and presence of the Capital Markets Authority in the different learning institutions. I don't know at what age or at what level of your education you first heard about capital markets, and whether it was a personal initiative or it was something something.
So I didn't even know that CM existed. Maybe yes, not the capital markets existed, but I actually got to know them from the US and the UK.
Yeah.
And then I was like, is there anything in Uganda? Was that bad?
What can the Capital Markets Authority leverage on easing, especially information dissemination to the young people as a means of increasing our capital markets, knowledge and information?
When you have a poor country, it means that even the ability of those guys to invest is low. So that means government should step in very aggressively as what you would call a backstop to that market until it grows. What the Capital Markets Authority should do, they should just not go to radio stations and talk about collective investment schemes, but they should socially engineer the brain of a child living, even S4, or even P7, that these markets exist. Social engineering, and by social engineering, is not even very expensive. It's a matter of you, at some point in life, you have to make money as a grown-up. But A, B, C, D, F, G. What the biggest disadvantage that our education system has is that even when you go to the highest level, I was at Law Development Center. In fact, recently I was talking to students about the stock market because they have just reformed the capital market, the LDC curriculum to introduce stock exchanges, but in a legal sense. I had to start from the basics. This is a person who has finished LLB, and by at LLB you have a chance to know, because shares, you have interfaced with them at least in LLB. But it's a person who doesn't know even, they think that Uganda Securities Exchange is Capital Markets Authority, and that they're one and the same. So you have to disentangle. So the thing is, they need to social engineer the brain of a child that this exists. Even when he doesn't invest initially, but he knows. Because everyone at some point gets money and has to invest it somewhere. But because we are limited, people's brains, and I think the biggest, one of the biggest things that your education system steals from you is the ability to imagine. That's one of the biggest things they steal from you. And if CMA does not, I think CMA should lobby Ministry of Education, because the stats are there. And people don't know, the research has been done. So they should find a way of entering an MOU. Instead of wasting time with the DPP and trying to find a way of prosecuting people who are committing Capital Markets Authority crimes, which crimes, well, apart from Ponzi schemes, which are even not yet illegal in Uganda, no one knows, they should actually look at the Ministry of Education and say, what can we do? And actually, that is something which I think even Parliament can fund. They can justify that budget. But 6 billion is so little for them to even do what they're supposed to do.
the mergers and takeovers in the region. It is a pair of unprecedented mergers and takeovers that has taken place in the Uganda's industrial sector, especially during this last quarter of 2023. A very recent one being the one of Cipla and Hima Cement. Both deals collectively have a total value of close to $100 million US, and they have signaled a departure of the dull deal-making activity pegged to the local manufacturing sector. Do you think these takeovers could be great opportunities for these new companies, or they could be something that is not healthy for the sector?
I read an article in East Africa and this week. I think for East Africa and for this week, they have in their front page for markets. They have a story which is saying, the Uchumi, I think it's not Uchumi, there's a Kenyan company that is, okay, they're trying to say that the unprecedented mergers and acquisition in the region is a green light for what is yet to come, and that they actually anticipate that many of them are going to come. Is this good? It depends. You know, the economies, ever since COVID, and now the unprecedented global inflation, have been shrinking. So, and most of these exits, you know, people exit for different reasons. For instance, from a venture capital perspective, someone can do an exit because, well, it's just the industry. Someone invests in you early and he needs to leave. For a company like, a profit-making company like, okay, not profit, but what people see as a cement-making company, that is something where the market at least would be. So you don't think that people are eager to leave. I would think these mergers and acquisitions are just pointing to the fact that the economy or the economies in this part of the world, East Africa, are not doing as well, and that the shareholders are becoming jittery, and that maybe they could be rushing for the exit. There's a company which did an exit, they were acquired, their shareholding was acquired, and the shareholder left. Not Cipla, another one, it's getting off my head. Part of the reason was the market of Uganda, I think, was either shrinking or stagnating, so they left. My issue would be, why would it be CMA to be approving all these mergers and acquisitions? Because that shouldn't even be their mandate. Unless maybe it is touching on the investor rights and the trading of the shares. And all you need to do is an information memorandum. That I'm going to do I will have fulfilled all the, but now they have created regulations. Yeah. The thing is, for me, the reason why some of these are even delaying is there's so much, and I think I've said it before, there is so much regulatory overreach. Look at what happened to Baroda. A simple bonus issue. You need a prospectus. You know, the thing is, for me, I would think that the mergers and acquisitions are just pointing to a grim picture. And I don't think it's going to improve. I think they're a bad signal. I think they're pointing to the fact that business environment is actually shrinking.
Uganda,
and that's not only Uganda, but even in the East Africa, even Kenya is not doing as well. Get? What we are seeing of late is that we are seeing a lot of industrial policy from advanced countries. Because of what is happening with China, there's a lot of language that is happening. In the political lexicon in the West is filled with friend-shoring, on-shoring, and that kind of, because recently even the chip-making industries, the West doesn't want to depend on fabrications as far as China, as far as Hong Kong, as far as Taiwan. The US and Biden administration is actually having an industrial policy to fund companies that are going to do chip making, ITEL, within the US borders, and Europe, in Ireland, they're doing the same. Now, the geopolitics is starting to having a tectonic shift. You're having unprecedented nationalism. The days of free trade and reckless, unregulated free trade might be over. And I think that's going to affect the amount of capital that's going to flow into our countries. Might. Because of what COVID did. I think you saw what happened in the US. When the lockdown and the PPEs were running short, and the Trump administration asked, guys, why are the PPEs? And they told them, oh, by the way, they come all the way from China, and now you have a lockdown. So they can't, and because of the geopolitical contestations between the global political West and China and the few people that are not in bed with. So we're going to have a lot of these. And I don't know how prepared we are for them, but I think that is where we are going. So, but because our politicians are very distracted, we are always not looking at things, the most important issues are never on the top of our menu. We're always discussing things that are supposed to be on the agenda, make them be the top. Some of these things may fly by and won't be solved. But the mergers, I think, because of the industries they're taking in, we should be worried. These are not simple mergers as you see in the venture capital world where because someone is acquired by Facebook and the early investor is happy. It may not be that kind.
Wow. Thank you so much, Council Lewis, for your time. And thank you for sharing your insights with us. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us and for watching the entire part. And thank you for all of those who have been on our social medias.
But what I should say lastly is that Bank of Uganda and Capital Markets Authority should look into the confusion in the bond market. Our bond market actually has more confusion than the Chiseka market. And I'm not exaggerating these things. No, I am not exaggerating this. I am not exaggerating this.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for the team behind the cameras and the production team. Till next time, have a good night. Bye for now.